Oh, it's done back, yeah, that's right.
I've been to church.
One church. Yeah, the gospel. The gospel. That's what we always say. It's not in the scripture, we want it there. The gospel. Yes, we do. This is the start.
The other team is not kind of sure, but maybe I'm not.
Oh, the whole attitude, the whole atmosphere.
How are your friends? How are your friends?
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. And we are here to announce that 8 senators from opposite sides of the political aisle are coming together on a common-sense immigration reform proposal that we believe can pass the Senate. I want to thank my 7 other colleagues here today. Each one of us is strong-willed. Each one of us has strong beliefs, differing beliefs. But if you would have seen that room in any of our 24 meetings and seen everyone argue strongly, but then come together to realize that we had to pass a bill and not everyone was going to get each thing he wanted, it was a sight that would give you some faith in the future of our democracies, especially on a morning like this. Now, we all know that our immigration system is broken, and it's time to get to work on fixing it. Immigration reform is vital to securing our borders, jump-starting our economy, and ensuring fuller access to that great American dream. The current status quo on immigration makes no sense. We turn away people from entering the country who could create thousands of jobs and let people cross our borders who take away jobs. Our approach is balanced. The border security triggers are strong, but achievable. The path to citizenship is tough, but it is accessible. Yes, our bill does secure the border first, but it treats the situation of those living in the shadows as an equally urgent priority. This is by design. We believe that Americans will support sensible solutions to dealing with the undocumented and future legal immigrants, but only if they are convinced there will not be future waves of illegal immigrants. When the 11 million who are here come out of the shadows, it will not only improve their lives and their families' lives, it will strengthen our country and its economy. In fact, conservative economist Douglas Holtz-Eakin has found that immigration reform will save taxpayers $2.7 trillion. Now, we want this legislation to meet the highest possible standards of openness and transparency. To that end, the bill has been online since Tuesday night. We will not begin markup until the first week of May, giving everyone 3 weeks to read this bill and prepare amendments. Chairman Leahy has pledged an extensive markup, and the Judiciary Committee includes some of the leading opponents of immigration reform who will have their ample opportunity to challenge our ideas. This ensures the bill will emerge from committee battle-tested. And then we anticipate a full and fair debate on the floor. Senator Reid has pledged to take it up no later than June. Now, as with any compromise, no one got everything they wanted. There were moments when it looked like an agreement would not come. The negotiations over a future flow program were particularly intense. But realizing the high stakes, the business community and organized labor rose to the occasion. When Tom Donahue from the Chamber and Rich Trumka from the AFL-CIO got on the phone together on a Friday night in late March and signed their names to the effort, it became clear an agreement was possible. Other stakeholders came together as well. Many of them are here today, and we thank you all for helping us make this dream become a reality. So, if you're wondering at why we are confident we can be successful at passing immigration reform this time around, look right behind me, these folks here. An unprecedented coalition has formed in favor of immigration reform. Growers and farm workers, high-tech business leaders, the faith community, some of the most well-known conservative activists in Washington, and some of the most progressive. Powerful outside forces have helped defeat certain other initiatives in Washington. But on immigration, the opposite is proving true. I am convinced this issue will not fall victim to the usual partisan gridlock. And we are mindful that we approach our task at a moment when the public has never been more fed up with Congress. But in a week when disillusionment with politics is being acutely felt, this bipartisan breakthrough offers a degree of hope. Despite strong personalities and even stronger disagreements on many issues, we met in the middle for the common good. The bill is proof the art of political compromise is not dead. So in conclusion, today is just the beginning of our voyage. It'll be long and arduous. There will be perils we can't even anticipate. But we start off with optimism because this bipartisan agreement gives us a sturdy ship to ride out the stormy seas ahead. Lastly, I'd like to mention someone who couldn't be here, but who is on the minds of all of us today, the late Ted Kennedy. He's a hero to many of us on both sides of the aisle, and especially on this issue. In many ways, our work picks up where he left off. And now I'd like to turn the podium over to Ted's longtime partner on this issue, a man who has become a great personal friend of mine through these negotiations, John McCain.
Thank you, Chuck, and thank all of you. And I want to obviously express my deep appreciation to all of my 7 colleagues. It is well known in the Senate that I'm not the easiest guy to get along with. But I must say they've put up with my tantrums and they've put up with a lot. And I want to say thank you to all of you for really doing something that America deserves. To paraphrase Churchill, this is not the end of the process, but it's the end of the beginning. There's a long and difficult road ahead. Committee hearings, markup, full and open amendments will be offered to the bill. Some will be intended to improve it. Some will be offered in the hope of killing it. None of us expect the bill the Senate ultimately votes on to be identical to the one that we introduced today. But we're all united in our determination that it is the end of the day, it remains a fair, comprehensive, and practical solution to a difficult problem that most Americans can support and that stands a good chance of passing the House and being signed into law by the President of the United States. The legislation isn't perfect. There are provisions most, if not all, senators can support. Some will appeal more to one side than the other. No one will like every provision in the bill. Neither should anyone oppose every provision. The legislation we're offering is a comprehensive and workable solution to our broken immigration system that piecemeal responses have not and cannot repair. The status quo threatens our security, damages our economy, disregards the rule of law, and neglects our humanitarian responsibilities. A problem of that magnitude that affects so many of our interests will never be easy to address, but never more necessary to address either. And its resolution cannot be achieved by means other than political compromise and consensus and the resolve to not make the perfect be the enemy of the good, and that's what we have tried to do. We've agreed on provisions to regain control of our borders and protect the safety of communities along the border and the security of our nation. We've addressed the labor needs of a growing and globally competitive economy with a workable guest worker policy and sensible expansion of the H-1B visa program. We've enforced the rule of law by making it more difficult for employers to hire people who've come here illegally. We've confronted the reality of de facto amnesty for the 11 million or more people who came here illegally by proposing a lengthy path to citizenship that doesn't place lawful immigrants at a disadvantage and is contingent on doing everything possible to make our border secure and discourage future waves of illegal immigration. Finally, we have recognized that most people who cross our border illegally or overstay their visas have done so for the same reason that attracted other immigrants here, to find economic opportunity and a better life for their families and to live in a society that values human dignity. We cannot sanction their violation of our immigration laws. Neither can we continue to have people desperate for a better life be exploited by unscrupulous human traffickers, abused by violent criminals, and left to die in our deserts. Yes, we offer a path to citizenship to people who didn't come here legally. They're here, and realistically, there is nothing we can do that will induce them all to return to their countries of origin. Many of them make valuable contributions to our society and will provide even more if they're brought out of the shadows and in compliance with our laws. And we are a nation with a conscience that can't tolerate the terrible violations of human rights that our current dysfunctional immigration system is unable to prevent. As I said, it's a lengthy path that doesn't precede securing our borders or the enforcement of our laws or supplant the privileges of legal immigrants. We have tried to make it easier to work here legally and harder to do so illegally. We have done our best to resolve the many different parts of this complicated problem. We expect and welcome suggested improvements to the bill by our colleagues during the debate and amendment process. We'll oppose only those amendments that are intended to prevent a comprehensive solution from passing and thereby perpetuate our current failed immigration system. There is no greater satisfaction in this job than in working with members from both parties in a good faith effort to serve the nation's interests. I thank my colleagues here for the privilege.
Thanks very much to Chuck and John. I can remember one of the earliest meetings of this group when we started talking about what's the bottom line, what's non-negotiable, why are we here? And I can remember the Democrats saying, whatever we write has to be fair and protect American workers. And I can recall the Republicans saying, whatever we write, we have to be firm in protecting our border. And the Democrats said the bottom line is a path to legalization and citizenship for these people living in the shadows. And the Republicans came back and said yes, but they have to earn their way on that path. Pay the taxes, pay the fines, have a job, learn English. It's not going to be easy. They have to earn their way. Those were the basic principles that started this conversation. I think there were about 24 meetings that took place as we came together sometime for hours at great length to talk about all of the issues that are part of this 800-plus page bill. This isn't perfect, but it's a good faith, common sense approach to fixing a badly broken immigration system. And there are several reasons why we're here and why particularly I'm here. First, the American people want us to do something. The notion that we would end this process with the same broken immigration system is just unacceptable. We believe on a bipartisan basis we've come up with a good approach, one that will make this country safer and more productive. But second, I want to say a word about an issue that touches my heart because it's one that I've been working on for more than 12 years, and that's the DREAM Act. This is an issue which means the world to me and to so many young people across this country. And I want to thank my colleagues here because that evening that we set aside for the DREAM Act was a pretty short meeting. Everybody said it's time. It is time. And the reason that it's time is not because just it's a good idea and there's wisdom behind it, but because we've all come to know the dreamers, those young people brought to this country by their parents with no decision in the process, those young people who are now stepping forward. Remember, they spent most of their young lives being counseled, keep your head down, don't sign anything. If the police show up, go quietly to the exit, because you can be deported in a second. But having learned that as children, they came to realize that to be part of this political process, they had to do exactly the opposite. They had to stand up at great personal risk and introduce themselves to America and tell their stories. Let me tell you 3 of the stories represented today. Gabby Pacheco, came to the United States from Ecuador at the age of 7. She was the highest-ranked junior ROT student in her high school. She served as president of Florida's junior college student government. 3 years ago, Gabby and 3 other dreamers walked all the way from Miami, Florida to Washington, D.C., 1,500 miles to build support for the DREAM Act. And along the way, they were joined by hundreds of young people, some dreamers and some just young people and supporters. They called their trip the Trail of Dreams. Gabby, thank you. Tolu Olabumni. Tolu is right here in the middle. Brought to America from Nigeria as a child. In 2002, she graduated from a prestigious university in Virginia with a degree in chemical engineering. It's been 10 years since Tolu graduated. She has yet to work a day as a chemical engineer because she is undocumented. Tolu, thank you for being here today. And Lorella Praley. Lorella? Where's Lorella? Lorella was brought to the United States from Peru as a child. She graduated summa cum laude from Quinnipiac University with a BA in political science and sociology. She started the Connecticut Students for a Dream, a statewide organization advocating for the DREAM Act, and she's now the Policy and Advocacy Director of United We Dream, the country's largest organization of young immigrants. All 3 of these young women have dedicated themselves full-time to helping pass a comprehensive immigration reform, not just to help themselves, but to help mom and dad and their brothers and sisters. When I look at these 3, I see the courage, hard work, and determination that makes America, this nation of immigrants, the greatest on earth. Someday in the not-too-distant future, it's my prayer, when our immigration reform law becomes the law of the land, that I can attend the naturalization ceremonies and watch these young people swear an oath of allegiance to this country that is their home. On that day, America will be a better and stronger country. Thank you.
I think it would be appropriate to refer to the bill as the Schumer-McCain bill because these 2 senators really started this process, and they have the smallest egos among us. And they would wear it better than the rest of us. But this, I hope the 3rd time is a charm. This is the 3rd time I've been involved in trying to fix this problem. I think 2013 is the year of immigration reform. I really do believe it. We've got Baptist ministers, Catholic priests, union bosses, chamber representatives. We're either going to get a bill or have one hell of a fight. So, why do we have 11 million illegal immigrants? More people couldn't get here for whatever reason. America is an idea. No one owns it. It's not owned by a race or an ethnic group or any particular religion. It's an idea for 200 years has grown and gotten better. We will always have a problem as long as we keep that idea intact of people wanting to come here. That's the good news. The bad news is we have a right and responsibility to control who comes here for the good of our nation and for the world at large. So the fact that we have so many people want to come here any way they can come here, if they have to walk through the desert or swim a river with a kid on their back, they will come. And that's a testament to what we've done as a nation for 200 years. And all we're telling the world and our neighbors and our friends and our fellow citizens, we've got to create order out of chaos. Because if you're here illegally, it's not much of a stretch for a guy from South Carolina to imagine what life must be like to live in this country legally, not knowing if the next knock on the door is somebody coming to take you and your family away. It's not much of a stretch for a guy from South Carolina to understand what it's like to live along the border of Arizona and Texas and have people go through your backyard, across your property at night, and do havoc. Bob Menendez has been one of the strongest and most consistent advocates for the 11 million, Bob. I think we've provided a solution worthy of this nation. About the pathway to citizenship, learn the language, pass a civics exam, pay a fine, work, pass a criminal background check, half of my family would be excluded. This is no easy task. I'm glad we're not applying it to ourselves. The hope is that America, I know, is ready for immigration reform. You look at all the polls. Is the Congress ready to do something that we should have done a long time ago? I really believe we are. If you think the border can be better secured, we have an idea for you to consider. If you think there's a shortage of legal labor and the current system is too hard to access, we have an idea for you to consider. If you're a union member or just an average American worried about losing your job because of cheap labor coming into your country, we have an idea to prevent that. If you're in the shadows and you worry about what's going to happen to you, we have a solution. You're going to have to earn the right to be an American. It's fair, it's tough, but it's going to be available. I've got one goal. When this is all said and done, there will not be a third wave of illegal immigration. Ronald Reagan gave amnesty to 3 million people trying to do the right thing, and the Congress failed to follow through. If we give the 11 million a second chance and we don't secure our borders and fix a broken immigration system and provide access to legal labor and do all the things that we should have done 20 years ago, shame on us. This bill fixes the problem, in my opinion. I'm going to fight for this bill. If you got a better idea, bring it on. But if you want to kill it, we're going to have a talk about that. I'm going to read one paragraph. We've always welcomed newcomers to the United States, and will continue to do so. But in order to qualify for the honor and privilege of eventual citizenship, our laws must be followed. The world depends on America to be strong, economically, militarily, and ethically. The establishment of a stable, just, and efficient immigration system only supports those goals. As a nation, we have the right and responsibility to make our borders safe, to establish clear and just rules for seeking citizenship, to control the flow of legal immigration, and to eliminate illegal immigration, which in some cases has become a threat to our national security. That paragraph sums up what I'm trying to do. To our fellow citizens, we know Congress is broken. This is an effort by 4 Democrats and 4 Republicans to prove to you and the rest of the members of the Senate and eventually the House, it doesn't have to stay broken. Thank you.
Well, let me start off by saying it was an extraordinary experience to work with my 7 other colleagues, and having the benefit of the tenacity of Chuck Schumer and John McCain to get us to the finish line, but also to have members like Lindsey Graham, who overall have very little to gain from taking on a tough challenge like immigration reform, but willing to do so because he knows it is in the national interest, the national security, the national economy, and what is right. And that really epitomizes, I think, all of my colleagues' efforts in this. And, you know, at the very beginning, I wasn't sure the commitment of all of my colleagues, but I must say that very shortly after the first few meetings, it became clear to me through very tough negotiations, and there were very tough moments, that in fact there was a real desire to solve a problem that has for too long gone unsolved. So I want to salute each and every one of them. and it's one of the highest moments that I've had, certainly in the Senate, but even in the 20 years between the House and the Senate that I've been in the Congress. And I'm looking forward to keeping that same tenacity and commitment to a final goal, which is send the President a law that he can sign. Let me just say that, as has been said, our system of immigration is broken. Americans know that. They want to see it fixed. This is about preserving the national security. It is about enhancing the national economy, and it is about preserving an American tradition that has had an exceptional reality of the greatest experiment in the history of mankind, bringing people from across the globe, ultimately driving to some of the best that America has had to offer, and preserving that, but in a way that recognizes our laws. As part of that, I have said that one of the key issues is making sure that we find a way to bring people out of the shadows into the light, to have the 11 million who are undocumented in our country come forth, register with the government, go through a criminal background check, and if you pass that criminal background check, then prospectively get a temporary permit to be in the United States, pay your taxes, learn English, and then ultimately have a pathway to becoming a permanent resident, and after that, a United States citizen, and fulfilling your dream and contributing to the nation. Now, this is a long pathway. It is a tough pathway, but it is an achievable pathway. And in that, it creates a real opportunity for these individuals. Now, there are some who will argue that we don't need immigration reform. Well, I can't secure America unless I know who is here to pursue the American dream versus who might be here to do it some harm. And unless I get millions out of the shadows into the light and register with the government, I won't be able to ascertain that. I can't secure the nation unless we do some of what our colleagues have sought in an overall, border security and interior enforcement and entrance-exit strategy, which this bill does. If I care about an American worker, and I certainly do, I want to see any American who has the desire to do any job in America first and foremost. But the reality is, if I don't want to depress his or her wages, the last thing I want is millions of people as an underclass that can be exploited, and at the end of the day, through that exploitation, create downward pressures on the wages of all Americans. And the reality is, even in this economy where there are some tough opportunities to try to find a job, there are some jobs in our country where we can't get anyone but immigrant labor to do it. So if you had fruits and vegetables for breakfast or dinner last night, it was probably picked by the bent back of an immigrant worker under a hot sun. If you had chicken for lunch today, it was probably plucked by the cut-up hands of an immigrant worker. If you have a loved one who is infirmed, they're probably being taken care of by the strong heart and tender hand of an immigrant worker. If you have some of the greatest high-tech companies in this nation, many of them were created by an immigrant to the United States. So this is about ensuring that the national economy is further promoted by making sure, we don't depress wages, and that we have people fully paying their taxes and paying their way, and at the same time promoting the opportunities for even greater jobs. Because you can't be the hotel manager, you can't be the concierge, you can't be the chef, you can't be the restaurant manager if you can't be able to do some of the fundamental things that those businesses need. And we ensure that in this way. And finally, we are a nation of immigrants. My parents came to this country in search of freedom. The reality is they came to the greatest country on the face of the earth. And to have their son be one of 100 United States senators growing up poor in a tenement and going to public schools is an enormous part of the American experience. We have some of the brightest and best in America that Dick Durbin was talking about. Young men and women who came to this country through no choice of their own, who came here because their parents brought here when they were children. The only flag they pledge allegiance to is that of the United States. The only national anthem they know is the Star-Spangled Banner. The reality is that for them, America is their home. And yet, after enormous investments in them in public education, when we have the opportunity for them to contribute to America's growth, wealth, and competitiveness, we turn our backs on them. And that's why Dick Durbin's effort on the DREAM Act, that this is the best DREAM Act that will have ever appeared before the Senate. So this is a moment to meet one of America's tough challenges in a way that is smart, that secures our borders, that promotes our economy, and at the end of the day, preserves our history as a nation of immigrants under the law. Simplemente quiero decir que esta es la mejor oportunidad que yo he visto en 20 años de negociar y tratar de lograr una reforma inmigratoria que he visto en estos 20 años. El esfuerzo bipartidario de estos colegas ha sido excepcional. No estamos de acuerdo en muchas otras cosas, pero en estos estamos completamente de acuerdo a la vía, a la seguridad, a la vía, a la prosperidad, a la vía, a la legalización para todo eso que están documentados en este país en una forma que es justa, pero una forma que se puede realizar. Ese es el momento de realizar los sueños de esos estudiantes que son soñeros. Esto es el momento de realizar para todos esos que están en la oscuridad, venir a la luz y poder participar plenamente en nuestra sociedad. Este es el momento donde vemos desde la izquierda a la derecha, donde vemos a conservadores y liberales, donde vemos a las industrias y los sindicatos, cuando vemos a las instituciones religiosas y las instituciones de grandes negocios en este país venir juntos. Y este es el momento de al fin realizar nuestro sueño conjunto. Thank you very much.
Actually, I changed my mind. No, I'm kidding.
Not again.
Not again. Once is enough.
Anybody have any water?
What someone said?
Yeah, it's been fun. You know, one of the things that makes our nation truly special and different from the rest of the world is that we're a nation of immigrants. And I know that's oversaid many times, but it can't be said enough. What makes us and distinguishes us from the rest of the world is we literally are a collection of the world's best and brightest. Not necessarily the world's richest or the world's most connected or the world's most powerful, but simply people who refuse to accept the constricts and the limitations of the society in which they lived. Because they believed that they were destined for more, and there was really only one nation on earth that said they would give them the chance to do that. And so people have come here, millions of people, over 200 years, and together work to build here the single greatest society and country in the history of all mankind. Now, like every sovereign nation, we have immigration laws, and immigration laws need to be followed. And unfortunately, both Republicans and Democrats have failed to enforce those laws. And the result is we have millions of human beings here today who are in violation of our immigration laws. Now, it's a problem that we have to solve. And it's made worse by the fact that in addition to that, we have a broken legal immigration system. It's cumbersome, it's complicated, it's bureaucratic, and it does not reflect the needs of the 21st century. And that's what this effort's all about. First and foremost, it's about modernizing our legal immigration system. It's about helping to attract the world's best and brightest talent and to keep the world's best and brightest talent. It's about ensuring that agriculture has the workers they need. It's about ensuring that American businesses, not at the expense of the American worker, but American businesses have access to temporary or seasonal labor as needed. But it's also about enforcing our immigration laws. It's about ensuring that the federal government once and for all does what it's supposed to do in a way that's effective and ensures that we never have this problem again. And that's why we say the federal government has to secure its border, and if it fails, then the states most affected by it will take care of it for them. It's why we set up a universal E-Verify system to ensure that the American worker is not disadvantaged and to ensure that, in fact, the magnet of illegal unemployment is not drawing people here illegally in the future. It's why we advocate for the existence and the creation of an entry-exit system, because 40% of our illegal immigration problem is visa overstays, not people that entered illegally. And finally, we have to deal with the reality, not the theory, not the perception, but the reality that there are millions of people living in this country today in violation of our immigration laws. Now, yes, they did violate our immigration laws, and they do not have a legal right to be here. No one has a legal right to illegally immigrate to the United States. But we're dealing with this not because we legally have to, but because, number one, it is in our national interest as a nation. It is not good for this country to have millions of people living in shadows. And number two, we're dealing with this issue because this is who we are. We are the most compassionate nation on earth. We are the people that have welcomed people from all over the world for over 200 years in a way that other countries rejected because they were scared of it. Not us, we embraced it. And because we did, those immigrants, each of us, the direct descendants of immigrants, have created here the single greatest society that man has ever known. This is who we are. We are the descendants of the homeless and the tempest-tossed. We are the descendants of the tired, the poor, the huddled masses that are yearning to breathe free. I guess at the end I would just say that this is our common heritage. And it's tragic that a nation of immigrants remains divided on the issue of immigration. This must once again become our strength. And I believe that through this effort we can make that happen. Let me close with one final point to my fellow Americans who share my commitment to limited government and free enterprise, who helped elect me in 2010. I would just remind them, America is a nation of immigrants. But both Republicans and Democrats have failed to enforce the law, and the result is we do have millions of people that are here against our immigration laws. But we're not going to deport them. So let's secure the border. Let's bring these people out of the shadows. They'll undergo a background check. They'll pay a fine. They'll start paying taxes. They won't qualify for federal benefits. We all wish we didn't have this problem, but we do, and we have to fix it. Because leaving things the way they are, that's the real amnesty. Brevemente en español simplemente quiero decir que para mí este es un tema de enorme importancia. Lo que distingue este país del resto del mundo es que somos un país inmigrante, creado por manos de inmigrantes, y que lo convirtieron en el país más grande en la historia del mundo. Tenemos una oportunidad no solamente de arreglar el sistema de inmigración, de modernizarlo, sino también de lidiar con las personas que se encuentran aquí en este momento ilegalmente, para que se conviertan parte de nuestra sociedad y avance en el futuro de este país. Muchísimas gracias. Thank you.
I thought I might go last, which would allow me just to say I agree with everything that's been said and sit down, but Jeff, you're going to get that honor. I first want to thank my colleagues that are up here for showing me how the Senate actually can work. And it's going to take more of that for us to get this bill passed. And this bill is incredibly important to the people of my state. I think Lindsey Graham named it well when he called it Schumer-McCain, because the leadership of those two gentlemen throughout this entire process has been absolutely outstanding. It's everything that I had wished that I would see from the day that I've been here. And if this bill is passed, or when this bill is passed, it will be a reaffirmation of two incredibly, essentially American ideas. The idea that we're committed as a country to the rule of law, and the idea that we are a nation of immigrants. And I would argue that it's those two ideas working together, unlike in any other country in the world, that decade after decade from our founding has enabled every generation of Americans to invent the future. And now it's our time in the 21st century to decide whether we are still up to that task, whether we can continue to invent the future, not just here, but for the entire world. And recommitting ourselves to these two notions is going to be a central part of moving us forward. I want to thank the people in Colorado who told me about how the broken immigration system is affecting their lives and their work. The peach growers on the west slope of Colorado, the cattle ranchers on the eastern plains, the people working in our high-tech fields, the people that were the dreamers when I was superintendent of the Denver Public Schools. Each one of them is struggling to get ahead in this economy, and every one of them feels burdened by a broken immigration system that's not working well. They're getting up every single day, working with whomever it is, Democrat or Republican, neighbors that they don't like terribly much, to drive their business forward and to drive their family forward. And the least they can expect from the United States Congress is that level of effort. And it's going to take that level of effort to get this passed. I think, again, the leadership that Senator Schumer and Senator McCain have shown on this will guide us through to the very end. Thank you very much. Thank you, gentlemen, very much.
I'm the
I want to say that in Spanish. Oh,
I'm the new guy here. I just arrived from the House this term, and I was over in the House last week visiting some of my old colleagues, and one of them said, "So how's the Senate? Who are you hanging out with over there? Maybe Pat Toomey or John Thune?" And I said, "You know, actually, Chuck Schumer and Dick Durbin." I never thought I'd say that, but this has been a great experience. I don't know what this bill will be called in the end, but I think we can all rest assured it will not be called the Flake Bill. That's tough enough to get people to get on these kind of bills without putting flake on it. But this has been a wonderful process, and let me just tell you, I'm new to the Senate, but I'm not new to this issue. We've worked this issue in the House for a number of years, and I grew up on a farm and a ranch in northern Arizona, working alongside migrant labor. Many undocumented immigrants were there. I saw what they went through. I saw how hard they worked. I saw what their motivations were to have a better life for themselves and for their families. And so this to me, has always been a personal issue, to make sure that they can have a process and an opportunity to do what we allow them to do here. To the citizens of Arizona who are concerned about the border, let me just tell you, Arizona has borne the brunt of the federal government's failure to have a secure border for a long time. Let me just say that this is a good bill. The provisions, the border security provisions are sound and strong, and we will make sure that they remain in the bill. And let me just say a word in the end. I know that all of us here want to pay tribute to our staff. This was a very difficult bill to write. And let me tell you, translating conflicting or confusing messages from the members is sometimes difficult. As John McCain always says, their reward will be in heaven. And but I appreciate being here. This is a good piece of legislation. We look forward to seeing it through. Thank you.
Okay, we'll take a few questions. Well, first of all, I think we have a very strong foundation. The four of us just didn't get, the 8 of us didn't just get together on a whim. We've been working for 3 months and struggling through these issues and each giving and each getting to know each other. That's number one. Second, I would say this, I think I can speak for both caucuses. I think the majority of people in both caucuses really want to get this done. People for differing reasons, coming from different regions with different ideologies, want to get this done. Are there people sort of tend to be at the extremes of both caucuses who don't? But I believe that this is ours to lose. I think that we have a great product here. It'll need improvement, but it's really strong. And I think we have great unity among ourselves that will keep this going through. So I don't think it's at all like gun control, frankly, because I think that the product that we're starting out with has broader support on a broader basis than guns did, both in the Senate and in the country. Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
Could I just mention one compelling reason? That's right behind me. When you look at the representation of business, of labor, of religious community, of the Hispanic community, of across the board, this is a coalition. I never thought I'd be standing with Richard Trumka. But let me say, and I want to thank you, Richard, I want to thank our chamber, and I want to thank Grover Norquist, and I want to thank all of our activists. This is why we will succeed. It will be because of this broad-based, dedicated support for this legislation.
Yeah, they are the wind beneath our wings. Yeah. Next, no, please, right here. Well, first of all, we have provisions that when unemployment is above a certain level, different for different levels by region, we will not have future immigrants come. It will only come at a time when unemployment is low, and in each case, and every one of us has been mindful of this, anyone who wants to bring in a new worker first has to look for an American worker and advertise for an American worker.
Senator, would you take a question from law enforcement?
No. Right here. You know, if I could, one word that underlines this proposal is balance. There are things for almost everyone to like in this bill, and there are some things that, you know, each person will not like. But when you put it all together, I think for a vast majority of people across an ideological spectrum, there's much more to like than not to like. And that's how I think we're going to get it done. What's going to make it successful more than anything else is the need to solve the problem and the product that, through a lot of hard work of our staffs and us, have created with the backing of the people behind us.
Senator, go ahead.
No, please.
As I said in my opening remarks, we are committed to good changes in the bill. This is not a final product. It's not engraved in golden tablets. But we are also committed to vote against amendments or proposals or changes that would kill the bill. And there's a difference there. We're not saying it's a perfect piece of legislation, and we think it can be improved on. But we also know opponents will be proposing amendments that, if passed, could collapse this very fragile coalition that we've been able to achieve. And again, I'd also like to point out, depending on how you ask the question, 70 to 80% of the American people believe that these individuals should be given a path to citizenship as long as they pay back taxes, pay a fine, and get in line behind everyone else. They believe that's fair. And that, I think, is one of the fundamentals that I think will help convince my more conservative friends.
Yes.
I think most Republicans are many more Republicans than the last time, are aware, as Marco and Bob pointed out so, I think, graphically, that the status quo is not acceptable. The status quo is not acceptable. And if you believe that, then you are willing to make compromises that may not fit your exact plan or proposal for immigration reform. And that's why it's so important that the 8 of us, and there is varied backgrounds and varied priorities and varied viewpoints, and that's why we have come together. And so the other thing about it is, and a little straight talk here, a little straight talk. Republicans have got to compete, and I say compete, for the Hispanic voter. Passage of this legislation, in my view, and I think my Republican friends agree with me, doesn't gain a single vote from the Hispanic community. But what it does, it puts us on a level where we can compete in the battle of ideas. We think we win with less government, lower taxes, strong national defense. We think we win. I'd be glad to. Let me just say, but right now, a little straight talk, right now we are not competitive, because this issue has got to be resolved in the minds of our citizens who feel that this is a vitally important issue that needs to be resolved.
Lindsay's.
Yes.
Okay, yes, a good question. In 1955, when I was born, how many workers were there for every Social Security retiree in this country? There were 16. How many are there today? 3. How many will there be in 20 years? 2. Where do the workers come from? 10,000 baby boomers are retiring a day. One day that'll be John. His mother's 101. Everybody's living like John's mother and senators from South Carolina. That's the good news. If we don't reform Medicare and Medicaid, we're going to become Greece. They're the drivers of the debt, and we'll find a way to do that. But if you don't have a legal immigration system to supplement a declining population, you're committing economic suicide. And here's the key: to bring people in from all over the world, not just the people who live next door. To bring them in on your terms, not theirs. a merit-based immigration system in the future that will have a family component. To those who say we don't need legal immigration, you're crazy. Just look at what's going on in America. We're a declining population. We need the best and the brightest, and sometimes the best and the brightest is the guy who starts as the janitor. So I'm really into this idea of supplementing America, and finally to the cost. Tell me how it costs more to have people paid under the table, living in fear, roaming around the country undocumented, versus having them in a system where they get paid over the counter, taxes are taken out, and they get no benefits for 10 years. That makes no sense. The only way America loses is to do nothing. And to those people who believe that we don't need legal immigration in the future, you're in denial about the demographics. And to those who say this costs more to take people out of the shadows and put them in a legal status where they pay taxes, you've certainly lost me. That makes no sense.
For those of you that like an English translation of Senator Graham's remarks, I'll be glad to provide it.
One last question. Yes, Antonietta. Yes.
Some members were saying about this bill that the bill has budget limits to avoid a higher score from CBO. How do you respond to that? And what's your explanation?
Okay. There are no gimmicks at all in this bill. One of our principles from the get-go, which has been and will continue to be, that this bill will be revenue neutral. Obviously, there are costs in this bill: securing the border, setting up the E-Verify system, making sure that the exit-entry system works, and other costs as well. But we also have income, the fines that those who are going to be on a path to citizenship will pay, as well as fees that companies that want to bring in workers will pay. And in fact, one never knows how the mysticism in CBO, so we don't know how they will score it. But our estimates are that this bill will actually bring in a surplus. If for some reason CBO is away from that, we will work before introduction of the bill to make sure it is revenue neutral. It's one of our bottom lines. Deficit neutral, sorry, deficit neutral. Thank you, everybody.
Sorry we couldn't do every favorite profile.
Hey, pal.
Thank you. Thank you.
And it meant so much. So good. Thank you for all your work.
We got to work on the chicken fluff.
Yes. Well, we're going to bring it back.